Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. This is Bailey Franklin here, and today I'm bringing to you a topic that I haven't really discussed before, and I'm hoping that some people will be pleased to see a video on this topic. Today we're going to talk about the unfair biases in reality television that prominently and continuously come up against Black people and other people of color. So, I know it's a mouthful and it's a heavy topic. I feel like this is important. There was actually a show in particular on Netflix called Next in Fashion that really triggered me, and they actually had a pretty informative and a pretty honest discussion about how reality shows are judged and how Black persons still feel secluded or feel out as if they're outliers within these reality shows, whether it be dating reality or competition reality or otherwise. And so, because that's the show that actually triggered me on this topic, and that I feel like that's actually a really important show to discuss overall, that's going to be hopefully filmed at a later date. But I did this actual episode and series is actually in my heart, and I wanted to discuss it because I do feel like there are some things that attribute to how Black people are treated on reality shows, how sometimes I feel that they leave before it's really their time. There may be other contestants that do subpar work that are chosen to stay in these kind of competitions over them. And of course, it's reality TV. I love to watch reality style shows, honestly, and it's fun. But then you feel it's disappointing over and over again to see that topics that affect Black people, when you're just watching a show for fun and relaxation, you still have to address these stereotypes and these biases and unfairness across the board. So today we're going to focus on the Netflix series Blown Away, season 2 to be specific, episode 3. And I watched the first season of Blown Away. There was a Black contestant on that season of the show as well. Why I want to specifically discuss season 2 is because the contestant that identified as Black on the first season, I do feel that he could have used a bit more work, honestly. I feel like he was good at what he did, but I do think that it was fair, the timing in which he left. Now, I think that maybe, everything could change, but I do feel like it wasn't a completely unfair decision to send him home at the time that the judges decided to send him home. So, that's why we're focusing on season 2 specifically and Jason McDonald today, because if you've watched that third episode, and if you haven't, maybe pause this video, go watch Blown Away, and then come back to this video. But if you've watched that third episode of season 2 of Blown Away, it is baloney, to say the least. And if you disagree, I would love to argue with you. Because I love to argue. So, Blown Away, for those of you that don't know, and again, you might want to watch the show for reference if you're watching this video, or maybe you don't even need to watch it to understand the topics and the things that are discussed in this video. Anyhow, Blown Away is a series on Netflix where glass blowers come from all over the country, and in the second season, actually all over the world. They come and they go to the biggest hot shop in North America. They blow glass, and they do a really great job of mystifying this glass and just turning it into different vessels, whether it be a cup, a pitcher, a decanter, a bowl, whatever. So they blow all kinds of things in glass. They sculpt, they make sculptures out of glass. And it's a pretty intense show. I love kind of the competitive nature of these styles of shows. And it can be really interesting if it's a topic that's more obscure or just, not as mainstream, like some competitions where, people are doing performing talents like singing or dancing. Obviously, or at least in my opinion, glass blowing is not as commonly seen as competitive, and you're not necessarily pitted against someone all the time. And I actually didn't know a lot of the glass blowing terms and as much as I do know about it now before I watched the competitive show, and so now I do a little bit. Anyhow, I think it's really interesting to see how these people are very passionate about the things that they do, and it's still competitive, so it's, fun to watch and all of those things. So this series has two judges technically every episode. They have 10 contestants, and they have a judge, Catherine Gray, that is the judge throughout the series on every single episode. And she is, just the master of her class of glass blowing. She's the chief judge for this show. So, and she is a white woman. So every episode, she's going to be the judge no matter what. The second judge, it's a judge that is a guest judge. So it could be someone, that is familiar with glass blowing. It could be someone who, depending on what episode it is, what the episode topic is, someone who's a master in that field. For instance, there was an episode about fashion, and so they brought a fashion designer in to help judge that episode of the competition. But either way, it's going to be someone different judging the show every episode. Now, and then the host, Nick Uhas, he does not necessarily judge, I don't believe. If so, they haven't made that abundantly clear. Someone might know better and be able to correct me. I think it's awkward to have only two judges, so he may be the third judge every episode, but they haven't made that abundantly clear. He's labeled as the host, while Catherine Gray is labeled as the chief judge. Anyhow, Nick Uhas is also a white person, a white male. So, as I said, guest judges rotate out each and every episode. But, and it's something I look for every time I watch a competitive reality show, because it's necessary. There is no representation throughout the first season. There's no representation of a guest judge being black. I think there may have been an Asian guest judge. Honestly, I doubt it. There's no representation of any black person or brown person being a judge throughout that entire first season, which almost made me want to stop watching, to be honest, because you're already put at a disadvantage if you are a black person and you're constantly being judged by the standard of white people. And it might sound a little strange, like, okay, so do I need to have one black judge for every black contestant? Well, no, not necessarily, but dang, give us some kind of representation. Like, it's honestly something that black people, I think, face throughout life and throughout pretty much any industry, unless it's like maybe hip hop, and even hip hop or like rap, if you want to go mainstream, a lot of times you do still have to be judged by white critics. And it's unfortunate. So I guess the thing is, if you are a black person, or especially a black person in America, you have a completely different set of life experiences than a white person will. So, while white people may see things a certain way, black people see them completely different at times. There was actually a show that I was watching on Netflix, it happens to be on Netflix as well, recently, and there was some sort of an example given where the character said, to some extent, we are expected to know everything about the Beatles because that's their territory, but they're not expected to know about Jodeci. And it makes sense. So taking that example to this glass blowing competition where people are blowing glass, making different kinds of sculptures and things like that, if there's a challenge, a brief given, and it's like, name your favorite, or sculpt your favorite band or your favorite singer or something that is inspired by your favorite band, and the judges aren't familiar with Jodeci, well, I'm automatically at a disadvantage if I want to sculpt Jodeci, because they're not going to understand where I'm coming from unless they've ever heard a Jodeci song or in general been associated with that style of music. So, it already kind of puts us at a disadvantage. Whereas, if I have a contestant going up against me who is making a sculpture that is, that's representative of the Beatles, well, hey, they're a shoo-in, because, what if the judges are more likely to at least know who the Beatles are, because in this competition, all the judges are white. So, and of course that's boiling it down and really making it quite simplistic. Obviously, there are some white people that may know who Jodeci is, but it's not as going to be as common, and it's not like an expectation. And so I think that as I said, you're already put into a place where you're either deciding to, make your work, make your art more mainstream, and I can't think of the word, not associate, but kind of like mold yourself into that world, or you're gonna have to stick out, and you're gonna have to do what's true to you, depending on what realm that lies in. And so already, again, we're having to make those decisions, whereas our counterparts are not having to even think twice about those kind of things. They don't. It's just regular life for them. Boy. So I think I left a point out, but I can always edit it back in, I guess. So to give you a little bit more information about the series, the winner receives a $60,000 prize and an artist residency, at the Corning Museum of Glass, which I didn't know it existed before, but it's a big deal in the glass world. And obviously $60,000 is a lot of money to put toward your craft, or anything else, obviously. So, as I said, we're focusing specifically on the third episode of Blown Away Season 2. And that episode is, I have some notes here on my phone. That episode is called Name That Tune, aired January 22nd, 2021, which is when, the rest of the second season aired. The guest evaluator for that episode, Catherine Durst, is an artist and illustrator. She is also a white woman. So this episode had 2 white women judging the glassblowers. There are 8 contestants left on this episode. They're asked to create a cartoon. They're actually asked to, the contestants are instructed to create their own original cartoon character, and they're critiqued by Catherine Durst, as I said before. So they're asked to create their own cartoon character, and let me specify, out of glass. So they blow glass, they stretch it, turn it into different forms, and there actually is some really cool cartoon characters on that episode. So again, if you haven't watched it already, probably interesting to actually watch that to have some context about it. The judges are judging on 3 different points of criteria altogether. That first part of the criteria, and one that we're going to focus on a lot, is adherence to the brief. How closely are you following the brief? If I asked you to make a Coke bottle, did you make a Coke bottle, or did you make a juice box? How, and is there a reason why maybe you created a juice box instead of a Coke bottle? Like, is your kid's favorite thing a juice box? Then maybe, maybe that works. But if I asked you to create a Coke bottle and you create a leather jacket, okay. So the second point is for technical skills. So there are different techniques like pulling cane, or, just different techniques that they might use to show, that they've mastered this craft, and that they are truly skilled in the technical areas of the craft. So, while making a paperweight is probably like a beginner skill in glass blowing, something that you could go into like a do-it-yourself, or like a create your own studio, and probably come out in 2 hours and have a probably kind of, janky looking paperweight. But if you create some kind of like, I don't know, Venetian like statue, and it hangs from the ceiling, like that's probably a lot more skillful. So, the second point is really just all about showing how much skill and how much effort and how much technique that you have to display. The third point, and this one kind of can vary, but for this specific episode, the third point is for overall appearance. So, did you show a lot of technique and a lot of skill and follow the brief, but your ending product had cracks in it, or, had jagged edges? What's going on with the overall appearance. So those are the three criteria that are strictly judged by these 2 judges on this episode. Now, to get to the meat, Jason McDonald is a contestant on this show, and he identifies as a black man. And what I love about what Jason McDonald does, he actually is kind of like, he's a bit ambiguous. Actually, his physical appearance is a bit ambiguous. When I first saw him on the show, I was like, well, I think he's black. And we all know that it's not necessarily all about the looks. We all look different. But I was just, I wasn't quite sure. He could have been, he could have been Native American. He could have been maybe Hispanic. I wasn't sure. But I believe on the first episode even, he makes it clear, yes, I'm a black man. This is a field that's dominated by white men, and I'm here to prove point. I'm here to show what I can do, regardless of skin color, regardless of the struggles that I faced in this industry. I know what I'm made of, and I know what I can do, and I know how talented I am with this. And I was like, thank you, because I do feel, and this is sidebar here again, I do feel that for people who are ambiguous, it's 10 times more important to address those things. Because if you are someone who can pass and you always pass, like, good for you, but like, you just kind of left the rest of us here to do what we have to do because we can't pass. Anyhow, like I said, completely different video on that topic. But yes, so he does address that, and he even makes I forget exactly what the vessel is, that he produces, but he does end up actually making something that is indicative of his African heritage on the show for that first season, and it's pretty cool. It's great. So, he's actually the only black contestant that's featured on this season. Again, there are 10 contestants, one of them is black. It's kind of sad to me. I think that, like I said, I didn't know anything about glassblowing before, and I'm sure most people in general don't, whether they're black or white. But, like, dang, y'all couldn't find anybody else? Nobody? I think so there's an Asian woman on the show as well, and there's actually a good representation of females on the show, but that's not what we're talking about, and all the females on the show are white contestants. But as far as black people or brown people, there are none other than Jason McDonald, and then there is an Asian representation as well. So, again, already kind of in this space where it's like weird misrepresentation. Now, as I was saying, glassblowing, maybe that is kind of indicative of the field. And I feel like it's important, again, to show that representation, because the more we see in more obscure fields, I promise I know how to say obscure, the more we show that we can do those things, and we don't have to just box ourselves in. And so I think that's great, especially for children to see, but for all of us, really. Anyhow, so I have some more notes here on that episode. McDonald creates a piece that focuses on a post-apocalyptic world where there is a rat, and he's like walking his pet cockroach. So, haha, funny. Again, this episode is about creating a cartoon, and that's the direction that he decided to go. A lot of the contestants kind of took it, however they wanted to take it. So he does create a cartoon rat, and he's walking his cartoon pet cockroach. It's kind of cute. So judges made some comments. They said, I don't feel that he does a lot of this type of sculpting, so this was probably very challenging. Still, I'm unsure of the approach that he took. And that's a quote from Catherine Gray, who's the chief judge. There were a couple more comments as well, but that was pretty much the gist of what was said. And so again, he ends up being voted off of this episode, which was sad, because I think where the judges went wrong, there is a contestant on the show, Chris Taylor. He refused to participate in the brief. I'll say it again. He refused to participate in the brief. He, multiple times throughout this episode, he basically says that he is too good to make a cartoon character, or that he's not going, he flat out says he never planned to participate in the brief. He says Chris Taylor doesn't do googly eyes. So my whole thing is like, bye, Chris. Goodbye, Chris Taylor. Like, if you don't want to participate in the brief, leave. Because that's unfair to the people that are actually here and fighting for a chance to continue to compete in this competition overall, like at large. So y'all, Chris Taylor, and he has a lot of experience with glass blowing. He had over 30 years of experience, and people were just like, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, Chris Taylor. Throughout the entire season. I know. Really annoying. But he was very arrogant, and I mean, that's not the worst thing in the world. People are arrogant. But specifically for him to say something like that, like, I'm not going to do this brief, basically. Like, really? And so I think that's part of why the judges did let him stay and ended up sending Jason McDonald home, because Chris Taylor is like this revered, almost like a revered figure in the glass blowing world with over 30 years of experience. Even like, I think there were 2 judges that came on the show, the second season, that said that Chris Taylor had been their instructor. So, okay, like, I get it, I understand, but at the same time, like, judge the competition fairly. I don't care. Like, I don't care if he has 30 years. I don't care. I don't care who he is. Judge the competition fairly, because, again, that's, like, extremely disrespectful to the people that are on the competition and actually trying. Like Jason McDonald, who actually followed the brief and made a cartoon. Chris Taylor, he made a cup of colored pencils. So he made a clear cup, and then he made colored pencils out of glass. And that's what he turned in. Oh my gosh. His piece was well executed, but it didn't follow the brief, and it really didn't even show any technical skill. Okay, the overall appearance, yes, it was cool, but for them to keep him on, I feel like was a slap in the face. There were also a couple of more. There was at least one more piece of work on that episode that I thought was questionable to be chosen over Jason's work. So, based on the judging criteria, strictly on that criteria alone, I think that Chris Taylor should have went home instead of Jason McDonald. I think that the judges were not willing to send him home over a black man. Maybe specifically because, you know, he is this very experienced glass blower. But the thing to me is, if you are going to come onto a competitive show, you know, and you already have 30 years of experience, you can't think that you're too good to do what they tell you to do. That doesn't make any sense. Like, you came onto a competition show where you don't have control over the work that you're doing, or at least the focus of the work you're doing, because someone's telling you exactly what they want you to do. You don't have control to say, I'm not gonna do it. And for them to keep him on the show after he basically refused to participate in that challenge, in that brief, it's despicable, and it paints a precedent for him moving forward that he can continue to behave like that, i.e. white privilege. So, I guess I say all this to say, this is a theme that I continue to see, and then, as most people do when they exit a competition, you know, black people just have to basically act like it didn't happen, and act like they still support whatever this industry is, and they probably do. They might. It's not like, because, you know, they if they are people who are full of gratitude, they shouldn't hold a grudge for against the judges or against the competition or against the show or whatever. They shouldn't hold that grudge forever. They shouldn't do that. But hey, I'm here. I will happily hold that grudge. Or at least talk about it, because it is something that needs to be discussed. As I said, this is a competition show. Yes, like, it's just reality, and after we watch it, like, we can move on and not really think about these people again. But this is a life-changing experience. This is $60,000. This is a residency that's very prestigious at a high level educational institution for these contestants. Like, this is not something that should be taken lightly. And because it is, like, this is why instances like this, these are why, you know, sometimes, I'm not gonna say this is the only reason, but this contributes to the reason why sometimes it feels like Black people are always a couple steps behind. And it's unfair and it needs to be stopped. That pretty much ends what I have to say on that episode altogether. Hopefully you all have watched it by now, and so you kind of know what I'm talking about, but that's the way that this competition is allowed to be judged. Some critiques, because I don't want to end on that, some critiques I think is to allow more diversity within the judging cast. Like I said, there may not be a ton of Black people in the glass blowing world, but like I said, there are judges that come in that are from you know, a multitude of different fields. So I would hope to see some more diversity if Netflix does renew this show for a third season. Because people are coming in from, you know, the fashion industry, the sporting industries, from different styles of art, cartoonistry, illustration, writing, all kinds of different industries. They have people come in. So, you know, you can't just use that as a crutch, use that excuse and say, oh, well, there aren't any Black people in glassblowing. Well, we know that, but there are judges that come on that are not directly related to the field of glassblowing. So I think that's one thing that could obviously help the way that this competition is judged. And I also think that one thing that could help is having maybe more than one challenge be judged, and that's a critique for the show overall, not even necessarily related to you know, any kind of racial aspect or any kind of bias, but maybe there needs to be at least another challenge. So there are other competitive shows where the judges for that week or for that episode aren't relying on just one singular, you know, moment or one singular work from that artist. You know, they might have 2 or 3 different challenges that they're judging throughout the week or throughout whatever the period of time is. That way, you know, somebody just has does something horribly wrong, or like on this glass blowing competition, stuff can just break at the last minute and they don't have time to piece it back together. So say something like that happens, they at least have something else to, you know, try to redeem themselves. Another critique could be, and this is across the board too for a lot of different shows, to have something that's judged blindly. So I watched the Great British Bake Off, the Great British Baking Show, and they have a competition or a challenge during the week long or that weekend of competition, where the judges come up and they taste their baked goods, their creations, but they don't know which baker has created what. So it takes a lot of different biases out. If they just have a golden child that they want to win, like, it's not necessarily going to work, you know, if they don't even know who created it. So maybe in some way replicating that form of judging and implementing that into the show, I think that would be very helpful in terms of just making it more fair across the board for all contestants. And that's really, I think, what's necessary for this to be effective, and for there to be some kind of display of, you know, we want to try to do this fairly. So that's all I have to say about that one. I hope that you all enjoyed it. If so, join me next time. I'm going to be talking about the episodes of Next in Fashion on Netflix that actually inspired me to really think more deeply about these topics that are affecting Black people and people of color in the reality competition venue. So again, thanks for watching, y'all. See you next time.